Okay, so we're on the Gemara. Today's daf is going to be daf Yud Zayin. We're going to start 2 lines from the bottom of daf Te Zayin. V'idach. The Gemara here is going to tell us the next of the 18 takonis that Chazal made, that Beis Shammai made in the time when they were in the attic of Hananiah ben Chizkiah. So before we start the Gemara inside, let me just mention a few things. First of all, the Gemara in this next takana is going to be discussing tumas oil. Tumas oil, of course, is when you have a mace and any other item or person that's under the same roof as the mace. That's tumas oil. Now, being under the same roof as a mace, minat Torah, means if you're under the same roof that has at least the minimum width of a tefach. If you're under the same place, under the same roof, but it does not have that minimum width of a tefach, the roof does not have the same width of a tefach, then the tumah does not apply. The tumas oil, that is, that does not apply. But the Gemara will now say that Chachamim made a gzeira, a takana at this time, that even if it's less than a tefach, even if it's a third of a tefach, that's enough of a roof, basically like a stick or a pole, that's going to be above a mace and above a person at the same time, one long pole above both of them. That will be enough to bring the tumas oil upon the person. That's what the Gemara is based on. There are more details to this, of course, but let's first see inside the Gemara, and I'll explain it as we go along. V'idach, what's the next gzeira? Maihi. Tithnan, we learned in the Mishnah. Kol hametaltalin mevi'in esatoma. Anytime you have any movable item, can bring tumah. It could serve as a roof, as an oil to bring tumah. Ba'oivi hamardeya. It has to have the thickness of a mardeya. A mardeya is a goad. It's a kind of a stick or a pole that's used with an animal when they are plowing in the field to push the animal along. This is called a mardeya in Hebrew, or in English a goad. So this mardeya had a standard size, and the size, as we'll see soon in the Gemara, was a third of a tefach. And if that mardeya, which is sort of a long stick or a long pole, that's going to be on one side above a mace, and on the other side above you, any part of you that is, you become tameh. The halacha, by the way, by tumas oil is, if any small part of your body enters under that oil, you become tameh. Even if a small finger or a small part of your body enters into that, under that same roof, under that same oil with the mace, you become tameh. So as long as the mardeya is on top of a mace and part of it is on top of you, you become tameh. Omar Rab Tarfon, when Rab Tarfon heard this, Rab Tarfon said he was very pained. He was very pained by hearing this because he thought it was a big mistake. They never made such a takana. It's not true. So he used a very sharp expression. Akapeya chesbeni. I should cut off my child. I should lose my child. I have his expression of pain. He had such tremendous pain when he heard this halacha that's being taught in a mistake. Shazu halacha mukupachas. This whole halacha is an error. Sheshama ashoye ashemeya v'to. The one that heard this halacha made a mistake by saying this halacha. He disagreed with this whole gzeira. They did not make this kind of a gzeira. So rather, here, Rab Tarfon tells us what did they hear, what is the actual halacha. So he said the halacha as follows. Ha'echer, a farmer. Oiver is walking, umarda'oi al kseifoi. And he's walking with his mardeya, with this pole on his shoulders. V'ihel tzad achas ala kever. One side of this pole went over a kever. So now we have a tumas oil here. The tumas oil is not only over a dead body, but also over a kever. So one part of this mardeya, of this pole, went over a kever. Timu oisai, and it made him tamei. Mishom kelim hama'ilim alameis. Because, so now it made, Timu oisa actually means it makes the mardeya tamei. Now this mardeya becomes tamei. Why does this mardeya become tamei? Because the mardeya, the pole that is, was directly above the kever of the dead person. The halacha b'negei to tumas oil is, as long as you have something that's directly above the dead body, whatever is above it becomes tamei. And there's no size for that, there's no measurement for that, there's no requirements for that. Anything, the tumah of the mace goes all the way up, straight up. Whatever is above tumas mace becomes tamei. with the din of tumas oil, that you now are a roof, you're above the tumas mace, you become tame. So what happened over here? This farmer was carrying this pole, and the pole passed through on top of a caver. So timu oisai, the pole itself becomes tame. Mishum kelim hama'ilim ala mace. Anything that's on top of a mace becomes tame. Now the Gemara doesn't finish off the story of what happened over here, of what's going on over here, but Rashi explains the rest of what the story with this farmer is. So now the farmer is holding the pole. The pole becomes an avatuma. It became tummy from the mace. The person that's touching the pole, that's holding the pole, becomes a rishon l'tuma, right? That's the halacha always. There's the avia voisatuma, which is the mace itself. The pole that's on top of the mace becomes an avatuma. The person that's holding the pole becomes a rishon l'tuma, but not more than a rishon l'tuma. It does not become an avatuma. So what Rav Tarfon is saying is, the mistake that was made was, the one that heard this halacha thought that just like the pole becomes an avatuma, it serves as an oil, and the person carrying the pole becomes an avatuma as well. But be'emes, he said, he made a mistake. The pole that was on top of the mace becomes an avatuma. The person that's touching the pole does not become an avatuma, he's only a rishon l'tuma. Now there's a big difference between an avatuma and rishon l'tuma. An avatuma has to have the hazah of the paraduma. Third day and the seventh day, he has to wait a week to become toir. Mashenk and Rishon l'tuma, he goes to the mikveh, and he's toir that same day, goes to the mikveh and becomes toir that night. So this is what Rav Tarfon over here said. This was the mistake. He does not become tame with a avatuma. He becomes tame with a rishon l'tuma just because he touched the pole, not more than that. Amar Rabbi Akiva responded to this, and Rabbi Akiva explained that we could say that the takana that was mentioned before was a true takana. Not exactly the way it was said in the beginning, but still Rabbi Akiva is going to explain the takana. I will fix the words that were heard in order that the takana of chachamim should remain. So here's the halacha. Sheyu kol metaltalin mevi'in esatume ala adam shenoisaisan. Again, we're talking about a person that's carrying an item. Let's go back to the example that we're talking about. Let's say a farmer. He's carrying a pole on his shoulders. So now that when he carries that pole, so part of the pole went on top of a caver, was passed through a caver. So it was an oil on top of a caver. And if that's the case, the person carrying this pole, he's actually touching the pole, he will become a tomei av hatuma like the pole itself. The Adam, the person carrying the pole, as long as what he's carrying is like a pole that's a mardeya, which is a third of a tefach wide, he becomes tomei and avatuma. So what Rabbi Akiva is saying over here is as follows. Before I read further inside, Rabbi Akiva is saying that there was a gzeira that Chachamim made, that when you have a oihel, part of it on top of a mace, and part of it on top of the person, even if it's less than a tefach, you become tamei with tumas oil. You will become an avatuma because it's like you're under the same oil even if it's less than a tefach. However, what the point that Rabbi Akiva is adding is only the person which is actually carrying the pole, and the pole is touching him, will become tamei avatuma. Now this person which is touching this pole, which part of it was on top of a mace, even if we're not going to make any gzeira, he's going to become a rishon l'tuma, because the pole is a avatuma, and he which touches the pole becomes a rishon l'tuma. Chachamim were geizer that he shouldn't be only a rishon l'tuma, he should be a avatuma, in order for people not to confuse the two. Because it's a big problem if people confuse avatuma with rishon l'tuma. Because like I mentioned before, rishon l'tuma could go to the mikveh immediately and be tar at night. An avatuma has to wait 7 days to become tar through the paraduma. So since this person that's carrying the pole and touching the pole becomes a rishon l'tuma, so once he becomes rishon l'tuma, chachamim were geizer that he should become an avatuma, so people shouldn't confuse between an av and rishon l'tuma, and he's going to be tamei for 7 days. But that's only regarding the person that was carrying this pole, and he would have anyways been tamei a rishon l'tuma. But Va'al atzman. Now, regarding the pole itself, b'chol shehen. Doesn't matter what size this pole was. It was a less than a tefach. It was a mashahu. The pole itself becomes tamei either way a avatuma because the pole went on top of a kaver. So once the pole itself is on top of the kaver, it becomes automatically tamei. Anything that's on top of a mace or on top of a kaver becomes tamei. Val shar odom v'kelim. Any other people, that's even a finger of another person, or any other kalim that's below this pole but did not touch the pole, it'll only become tamei if the pole is wide enough a tefach to serve as a oil, to serve as a roof, to make them tamei. So Rabbi Akiva is saying this gzeira of Chazal, that even if it's less than a tefach, even if it's just a third of a tefach, you become tamei b'tumas oil as if you're touching it, if it's on your shoulders. If you're not touching it, so then we go back to the way it is min ha-Torah, that it has to be wide a tefach. V'amar Rabbi Yanai, now Rabbi Yanai explains what I already said, the measurement of this mardeya. Umardeya she'omru, this pole, this mardeya that they said, that Chachamim were geyser, that if you're below it, together with a mace, you become tamei with a tumas oil, ein ba'avyei tefach. It does not have the minimum width of a tefach, which is the requirement min ha-Torah to be an oil. But the yeshba kefay tefach, it has the circumference of a tefach, which mathematically means that it's a third of a tefach. The width of it is a third of a tefach, so then the circumference of it will be a tefach. And that the gozru ala kefay mishum ovyai, because people confused the two, so therefore they were geyser that even if it just has a third of a tefach, it should be metame betumas oil. So this is the next takana that Chazal made. Frag the Gemara. Rab Tarfon, the Omar Akapeach as B'ni Sha'aloch Azumu Kupachas. Rab Tarfon had big tsar and he didn't agree to this whole takana. So according to him, Batzru Luhu, so we have to subtract one from the 18 takanas. So what are we going to add according to Rab Tarfon? Omar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, so the same that we learned already yesterday, Af B'nois Kutin Nidois Marisasan Boy Bayoim Gozru. The takana that they made to girls, young girls that came from the kutim, that they should be treated like a nida, that takana was also made on this day according to Rab Tarfon. Like we said, like the Gemara said before, according to Rab Yaisi. And he also agrees to Rab Meir. Rab Meir before brought, there was a gzeira when a person left a dish, a pail under a pipe of water, that the water that enters into that pail cannot be used for a mikveh. He holds of that takana. And he also holds of the takana that they made for the benois kutim to make up for this one over here that he doesn't hold of. The Gemara goes on to the next takana. The next takana is ha-boitzer legas. A person, we had this already before, a person that is cutting grapes, he's cutting grapes to be used in a wine press. So Shammai says huchshar. There's juice that comes out of the grapes while you're cutting it, and that's enough to make the grapes susceptible for tumah. As we learned already many times, in order for any produce to become susceptible to tumah, it has to come in contact with fluid, with liquid. Over here, the juice that comes out of the grapes will make it susceptible to tumah. Hillel says, Loi hochsha. It does not make it susceptible to tumah. The person is not interested in that juice coming out. Why should he want the juice to go to waste? He wants to press it in the press. So since he's not interested in it, it's not hochsha. Amalei Hillel Shammai. So Hillel challenged Shammai in the following way. Mipnei ma, why are you saying boitzrin betara, that when you cut grapes you have to use a clean vessel because the juice will make the grapes susceptible to tumah, but ve'ein moiskin betara. When you cut olives, the expression of moiskin is used when you harvest olives, so then it does not have to be done in a pure vessel. Over there you didn't make this gzeira. Why not? If you're making the gzeira by grapes, why not make the same gzeira by olives? Amalei, Shammai answered, Imtakni taini, if you're going to provoke me, gezrani tume afala mesike. I'm going to make a gzeira also regarding the olives as well, that when you cut them, it has to be done in a pure keli. When this conversation was going on, they stuck a sword into the Beis Medrash. This was a sign that they're going to take a vote to see if they should follow Shammai's opinion or not. And Amru, and they said, Hanichnas yikanes, anyone that wishes to enter could come in, but v'hayoytze al yetze, whoever wants to leave may not leave. And on that day, Hillel was subdued and he sat in front of Shammai, like one of the students, because the Talmidei Beishamai outnumbered Talmidei Beis Hillel, and Hillel sat in front of Shammai, that is, like a student. And the Gemara adds, this was a difficult day for Klal Yisrael, like the day that the Egel happened. And the Gaza Shammai, the Hillel, and at that time, so Shammai was stronger, so Shammai made the Gzeira, and Hillel accepted it. At that point, the Gzeira was not accepted. But then V'aso Talmidayu, later on, the students of Beis Shammai came, and that was in the attic of Hananya ben Chizkiah, Gazur, they made the Gzeira again, V'kiblu minayu, and then the Gzeira was accepted. Okay, so the Gemara is going to explain the reason for this Gzeira, more specifically what the machlekes of Shammai and Hillel is. But before we go weiter, this is a very, very interesting Gemara. That on this day that Hillel sat in front of Shammai like a student, it was as a difficult a day for Klal Yisrael like the day of the Egel. What's the pshat in this? All the Mefarshim asked the question, how could you say such a thing? Why is such an incident as difficult as the Egel itself? When you look into Rashi, Koshe, so Rashi says, what's so difficult? Lefisha Hillel Nasi. Hillel is the leader of Klal Yisrael, V'anvesan, and he's humble. So the Mefarshim asked the question, the Sfas Emes asks the question, no, Bishleima, the fact that Rashi says that he was a leader, so the fact that the leader, the Nasi, has to sit subdued to Shammai, so that's not appropriate. But the fact that Rashi adds that he was an Onov, he was an Anvesan, he was humble, so why would that be anything negative? Adarabba, if he's humble, so then he doesn't mind sitting, being subdued in front of Beis Shammai, in front of Shammai, that is. So there's a long sikha from the Rebbe about this, in Lekut Sichas Chelik Chavdalat Parshas Dvarim. And the point the Rebbe makes over there is a few things. First of all, the Rebbe is medayik. The Gemara does not say V'hoya kashel Yisrael ka'egel. The Gemara says Kiyayim shenase b'ya'egel, like the day that the Egel was made, not like the Egel itself. And the Rebbe points out that when the Egel happened, there were two things. There was the day the Egel was made. We learned this just now in Parshas Kisisa, Barichas. So there's the day that the Egel was made, and then there's the following day when they actually used the Egel for Avodah Zarah. 2 different days. That's one thing the Rebbe points out. Then the Rebbe points out that when the Yidden made the Egel, it says in Mefarshim that they sort of had a good intention. They were thinking that they had, just like the Haftarah Moshe Rabbeinu was a leader, as a physical human being that should be an intermediary between them and the Eibishter, so too they wanted to have something physical that should be an intermediary between them and the Eibishter. Just like you find later, there's the Mishkan, there's the Aron, there's the Kapairas, there's the Kruvim that serves sort of as an intermediary where the Eibishter dwells here in this world. That was the whole point of the Egel. That's why they made L'chatchila the Egel. The next day, something negative came out of it, that the Erev Rav began serving it as an Avodah Zarah, and it eventually evolved into something much more negative, into Avodah Zarah. But on the day itself that it was made, it could have been something positive. The Rebbe says, similar is also Menegeh to Hillel and Shammai. We know that Hillel is Chesed, and Shammai is Gevurah. Chesed recognizes and sees and draws the Eibishter's presence into the world. That's what Chesed is, the Ashpah of the Eibishter that recognizes and sees the Eibishter's presence in the world. Shammai is Gevurah. Shammai is always more stringent and more harsh and is more machmer because he sees the world as a place which is a contradiction to Hashem's presence in the world. And we have to negate the world's existence. Therefore, at Bizman Hazeh at least, we paskin always like Hillel in order to draw and bring the Eibishter's presence into the world, and not to be machmer like Shammai. So over here, the fact that on this day, Hillel was sitting in front of Beis Shammai that is, and potentially this could have led to the fact that the next day and in the future, the halacha from then on would be like Shammai. This was a potential of something that could lead to something negative. On that day itself, the fact that Hillel sat in front of Shammai, that wasn't the problem. But the fact that it could lead to something negative, that was the problem. And Rashi's Miram is this by adding the fact that Hillel was an Onov, because that is the reason why we paskin like Hillel. The Gemara says we paskin like Hillel because he is the Onov. Over here, Hillel is the Onov, and here potentially there's a risk that based on this incident in the future, the halacha won't be like Hillel anymore. And then the Rebbe says, B'dakas the dakas could be nishtalshal. Once you follow Shammai's opinion and you start recognizing and looking at the world as a separate entity outside of Hashem, and you have to be machmer, this could, with a big ishtalshalos, bring a different attitude in our Avodas Hashem, where you have to battle the existence of the world in a different way than Hillel's approach. And this is to some degree, B'dakas, similar to what could come out from the Egel. So the Gemara never meant to say that this is mamish like the Egel itself. But what it's saying is, just like the Egel Achatchila was positive, or could have been positive, and something negative came out of it afterwards, the same thing over here also. Paskening like Shammai on that day was nothing wrong. But potentially later, this Hanhaga of Shammai, if we'll pasken always like Shammai, could be hishtalshalos, bring out something negative, to have a different attitude to the world, that the world is a metzias b'fnei atzma that you have to battle with, and therefore the Gemara compares it to the day that the Egel was made. That's the Rebbe's pshat in the Gemara. You can look in Chelik Chavdalet Parshas Devarim, it's a Meir de Gesicha. Let's see weiter in the Gemara. My timer. So now what's the reason for this argument between Shammai and Hillel, whether they made this Gzeira regarding the cutting of the grapes, whether it's susceptible to Tumah or not? Amaziri, Amar Rab Chanina, Gzeira, the Gzeira is, Shemi Yivtzerenu Bekupais Tmeis. Perhaps he might use Tomei baskets to cut the grapes. And if you use Tomei baskets, any juice that comes in contact with Tomei baskets, that juice becomes immediately Tomei, and that juice will immediately make the grapes Tomei. So because of such a case, therefore they were geized that whenever you cut grapes, you shouldn't use ever any Tomei baskets. You should know that it's susceptible to Tumah, and you should be very, very careful. Sagt the Gemara weiter, this is understandable. This works according to the one that says that if you have a Tomei Keli and the mashkin that come in contact with those Tomei Kelim, even if those mashkin were mashkin that you completely unintended to be there, it's the juice that comes out and you didn't intend it to be there, but still, because it enters into the Tomei Keli, it becomes Tomei. So shap it. We could understand why we have Gzeira. There's another mandama that argues and says that even if the basket is Tomei and there's juice that comes out, but because you did not intend that liquid to be there at all, the Tomei basket will not make it Tomei. So then what kind of Gzeira is there here? There's no reason to be geyser for anything. Even if you actually have Tomei baskets, the fluid of the juice that comes out does not become Tomei. Ela Maziri Amar Rab Chanina, a different Gzeira. Gzeira Shami Yivtzerenu Bekupais Mezufafais. He might be using a basket which is insulated. Usually when a person uses a basket to gather the grapes, so it's probably not an insulated basket, and he's going to take the grapes to the wine press. So whatever juice comes out is not staying inside the basket. So the person does not intend to use that juice at all. But if you have insulated baskets, so then maybe the person is thinking whatever juice comes out is insulated in the basket, I'm going to use it in the wine press as well. Kumtais, that liquid is something that he's interested in, he wants, and that will make it susceptible to Tumah. So that was the Gzeira. Rava says a different Gzeira. Gzeira mishom hanoishchais. The Gzeira here is when you have clusters of grapes that are sort of very tight together, and he separates these grapes, and while he separates the grapes, when he's picking it, so some juice comes out. Because the person is doing it by hand, whatever juice comes out, you can't say that he doesn't intend that juice to come out. It's like psik reisha, the juice is going to come out, and therefore that juice will become Tomei. Will make it susceptible to Tumah, that is. Rav Nachman Amar, Rabba Baravua, another Gzeira. Pa'omim she'adam haylech lekarmai. Sometimes a person goes out into his vineyard, leida imigiu anovim leptzira, to go and inspect our novim, to see if the time for harvest has come. Oiloi, or maybe not, they're not ripe yet. V'noitel eshkol anovim, and he takes a cluster of grapes, l'saychtai, to squeeze it, to see if it's ready, to see the juice, to see if it's ready to be harvested. Umezalef al gabi anovim, and he drips from this juice on other grapes. ubishas betzida, and then when he comes back later to harvest the grapes, adayim mashka tefech aleim. They might have from that juice that he intentionally squeezed onto the grapes, it might still be there, and when he cuts it, it's already automatically susceptible to tumah because he personally intentionally squeezed the juice onto the grapes. So because of that situation where a person goes and inspects the grapes in advance and he makes it wet, therefore they will geyser according to Shammai that it should always be done betara because it's susceptible to tumah. V'idach. The Gemara goes on. What's the next gzeira? Omar Tevi Rishpa Omar Shmuel Tevi Rishpa is the name of a person. Rishpa, Rashi says he was a person that used to spread out nets to capture animals and birds. So he said in the name of Shmuel, Af gidulei truma by bayem gazru. The fact that if a person takes truma, he has seeds of truma, he has any other food of truma, and he takes it and he replants it in the ground. Now, once you replant it, minat teire, it rots in the ground, and whatever grows is a new entity. It doesn't have the status of truma anymore. But chachamim were geyser that if you plant truma, whatever grows should have the same status as truma. This gzeira was made on this day. My time, and what's the reason for this gzeira? Amar Rab Chanina, gzeira mishum truma tahira biyad Yisrael, because a Yisrael might separate truma, but he's very stingy. He's from, but he's very stingy. He doesn't want to give the truma to the kohen, so he keeps it in his own possession. And what is he going to do with it? Can't eat it. So he's going to take it, he's going to replant it, and then he's going to be able to eat it because now it's a new entity. So they were geyser that if you replant it, it remains truma, and you can't use it, so he'll give it to the kohen. Rava doesn't understand this gzeira. If you're suspecting this person for this, so then afrushi nami leilifreshu. So he shouldn't be giving so much truma. Okay, so Rashi explains over here. Kivin the efshar. So let's see first lashon the Gemara. Kivin the efshar lemebad chita achas kiddushmul. It's possible to take one kernel and to give truma for an entire pile of truma. Minat teire, there is no shear of the truma how much a person has to give. You can take one little chita for everything. So he can do like Shmuel if he's really stingy and he doesn't want to give the kohen. He just has to take off a tiny kernel and the loika of it. And if he did not do this, if he took much more truma, so then himuni mehemni. We should trust him that he's not going to keep the truma and then replant it. Why are we geyser that this person is taking the truma with the requirement that Chazal required, a much larger requirement than just one chita, and he might replant it to use it for himself? Why would he do such a thing? That's the way Rashi explains the Gemara here. Ella, rather, gzeira, the pshat over here is mishum truma tmeya biyad kohen. The kohen himself, if a kohen has truma tmeya, what could he do with truma tmeya? He can't eat the truma tmeya. You could use it, you have to burn the truma tmeya. You could use it maybe as fuel for a fire and so on, but you can't eat it. So what does this kohen want to do? The kohen might keep it, and he might want to replant it when the season comes to plant. And then it'll become chulin, it's a new entity, and then he could eat it. So because the kohen might hold on to it, dilme mashi legabe, he might hold on to this truma tmeya until he could replant it, basile de takola, and he might come to eat it. If it's sitting around, he might forget that it's only to be used to burn, and he might come to eat it. So therefore they were geyser that even if you plant it, it's going to retain its status of truma, so therefore he's not going to come to leave it around. Ve'edach. What was the next takana? So the takana was, and this is something that's brought in the Mishnah later in Shabbos, a person that's walking on the way and it became dark and it's after it says Shabbos arrived, and he's walking and he has his wallet in his pocket. Noisen kisai lenochri. So what he does is he gives his wallet to a guy to carry for him. By bayim gazru. They made this gzeira on this day. It's interesting. This is actually on one hand, this is a chumra, this is a gzeira, but at the same time there's a kula, there's a leniency here as well. The chumra is because he might think to himself, you know what, I'm going to walk 2 amas at a time. I'm not allowed to carry this 4 amas at a time in the Rosh Hashanah. I'll walk 2 amas and I'll stop, and I'll walk 2 amas and I'll stop. And like this I can carry my wallet home. But Chachamim were geyser, you should not do that. Rather, you should take the wallet out of your pocket and give it to a guy. But that itself is a kula, because usually you're not allowed to tell a guy to do a malacha for you on Shabbos. But over here, because Chachamim knew that a person will not be able to leave his wallet there, it's going to be too much of a challenge for him to tell him to leave the wallet there on the street with his license, with his credit card, and with everything else in it. So they said, you give it to a guy, and the guy will carry it for you. So this takana was made on this day as well.
So the Gzeira is that they shouldn't walk.
That you shouldn't walk 4 amos with it. Correct. That's the Gzeira. Rather give it to a guy. The next Gzeira, Omar Bali Omar Avi Sanveta. As Avi Misanveta said, Piton v'shamnon v'yenon ubneiseyan. The bread that's baked by a guy, the oil that comes from a guy, and the wine that comes from a guy, ubneiseyan, and their daughters as well. As Rashi brings over here, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah explains, it doesn't refer to marrying a Goyish girl, but it refers to yichud with a Goyish girl. They were guys that are on yichud with a Goyish girl. Kulan miyud ches davar hein. These are all also from the 18 part of the 18 takanas, and as Rashi says, they are all counted as one. These are all they were all made together, and they were all made for the same purpose. And the purpose over here was because all of these things will bring social mingling and social closeness with Goyim, and in order for Yidden to stay away from Goyim, or the expression that we're hearing a lot lately is social distancing, so therefore there were geyser, all of these things, the bread, the oil, and the wine, and seclusion with a Goyish girl, in order to stay away from the Goyim. So
all this is the Rabbanan.
And these are all Gzeiris the Rabbanan that were made at this time period. Now, Derech Agav, when you get to the Pas, so there's Pas Palter, which is bread that's baked by a baker, and that in Shulchan Aruch it's brought that there's a machlokes about it, and you could be makel to use it. And that's what it says in Shulchan Aruch, that even those that are mekel, but an aseris made tshuva, they're machmer. But pas balabayis, if there's a goyish private house owner that breaks bread, that's also l'kul alma to use. So there are those that are mekel on pas that's baked by a goyish bakery. But if you can, most people are machmer not to use any bread from a goyish bakery. The gzeira on the oil was not accepted in Klal Yisrael, as the Gemara in Avodah Zarah says, and is not kept. It wasn't accepted b'chlal. The gzeira on the wine is a very strong gzeira, and the gzeira on the wine is actually also a gzeira that it's also bahana, because that's also connected to yayin nesach. It's already a different story. That's a very strong gzeira. We'll see Mitzvah when we learn the Gemara in Avodah Zarah. And B'nai Sayin, and then there's the gzeira of yichud with a goyish girl. So this is the gzeira. So now the Gemara is going to take account of all the Yud Ches Davar, and to make the cheshbon, do we have Yud Ches, do we have 18 or not? So the Gemara goes back to something that we learned at the end of Daf Tezayin. Again, let me just remind you, on Daf Tezayin, the Gemara brought a Mishnah there, I believe it was. Yep, there was a Mishnah, B'negei a person that puts a pail under the pipe of water, and the water enters into there, you forgot the pail there, and the weather changed, and there's a gzeira that they said that you can't use that water for a mikveh. That was what Beis Shammai was geyser, and the Gemara there brought that Rabbi Yossi disagreed. Rabbi Yossi said, no, this was a machlokes between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, and Beis Hillel was mekel, and this was not part of the 18 things, not part of the 18 takonis. So the Gemara is now going to examine the number of 18 things based on that machlokes before. Zok the Gemara. According to Rab Meir, that says regarding that case of the pail of water that's used by the pipe of water, that by the mikveh that they were geyser. So it makes sense. We have 18 things. If you count them up, you'll have 18. And Rashi over here counts up all the things that we have. You have the 9 things that the Gemara brought in the beginning that are all sheni l'tumah. That was the first thing that the Gemara brought from the Mishnah of Zavin. Ein kairin. You're not allowed to read on Shabbos, that is, by a light of a lamp. Ein poilin, not to delouse your clothing by the light of a lamp. That's 11. And then you have the case of the tziner, which is the pipe, the mikveh, the story with that we just mentioned. Mardeya, the tumah of oil, when it's less than a tefach. Benois kutim, which is the gzeira they made on girls of the kutim, that they're like a nida. And baitzer, what we just learned, when you cut the grapes, that it becomes susceptible to tumah. The gidule truma, what grows from truma retains its status of truma. And noisin kisai, that you have to give your wallet to a guy. And piton shamnon, and then the gzeiras that they made on the bread, on the oil, and on the wine. Chada, that's all one. So together, if you count it, it's 18. Those are the 18 takanas that they made. So that works according to Rab Meir. However, according to Rabbi Yossi, Shifsari Havyon, there's only 17. So even though the Gemara before asked this question on Rabbi Yossi, and the Gemara said, we're going to add the case of Benois Kutim, but we need that for the 18. Even according to Rabbi Meir, we need that for the 18. So according to Rabbi Yossi, we're still left with 17. And Tosfos points out that this is a question according to Rabbi Yossi, and it's also a question according to Rab Tarfon that we just learned. Rab Tarfon also took out one, the case of the tumas oil that they made the gzeira. So according to Rab Tarfon, the same question. So the Gemara answers, Ike ha de Rav Acha bar Ada. There is an 18th gzeira which was mentioned by Rav Acha bar Ada. Dom Rav Acha bar Ada, Dom Rabbi Yitzchak. So he said as follows. Gozru. So he starts off with the gzeira that we mentioned before, and then he's going to add another gzeira that we didn't mention before. Gozru al piton mishum shamnon. They made the gzeira not to use the bread that's baked by the goyim because of their oil. Val shamnon, and also a gzeira on the oil mishum yenon, because of their wine. So the Gemara asks on this, wait a minute, al piton mishum shamnon? They made the gzeira on the bread, so you shouldn't come to eat their or drink their oil? What does that mean? My ulme de shema mi pas. Why is there any advantage should the gzeira on the oil over the bread? Ella rather, gazru al piton vishamnon, the gzeira was on the bread and on their oil, mishum yenon, because of the wine. The wine is obviously something which is used more socially in settings, and it's alcoholic beverage that brings greater closeness. That was the original gzeira. And then because of that, they also made the gzeira on the bread and on the wine. Val yenon mishum, on the oil, bread and the oil, right? Val yenon mishum b'nai seyen, and the gzeira on the wine was because of the girls, that they shouldn't seclude themselves with the girls and come to marry them. Val b'nai seyen, and why not to seclude themselves with a goyish girl? Mishum davar acher, not to come to davar acher, which means avodah zarah. So till here is basically everything we learned before. Now Rav Acha bar Ada adds another gzeira that we didn't learn before. Va'al davar acher, there was one more gzeira, mishum davar acher, because of another reason. Very interesting expression, but the Gemara explains it right away. My davar acher, what was this other gzeira? Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said, Gozru al tinik nachri. They made a gzeira on the goyish children, shemetame beziva, that he should be considered to be tame like a zav, even though there is no zav by a goy, for sure not a child, there's no idea of ziva, but they made a gzeira on goyish children to be tame like a zav. Why? Shaloi yehei Tinoik Yisrael Rogel Etzloi, so that a Yiddish child should not be accustomed to playing with a Goyish child with Mishkav Zachar. And they can come to a conduct of Mishkav Zachar, having inappropriate relationships, so they wanted to keep a distance between Yiddish children and Goyish children. This is the 18th Gzeira according to Rabbi Yossi. Fragt the Gemara. So if we have an 18th Gzeira according to Rabbi Yossi, Rab Meir nami teshsari have. So according to Rab Meir, we're going to have 19 Gzeiras. So we have one extra. And for the Gemara, now the Gemara goes back to something that we learned all the way before. It's probably on Daf Yud Gimel or so. Daf Yud Dalet, Daf Yud Gimel. So the Gemara says we had over there the Gzeiras that they made regarding Mashkin. And there were two Gzeiras they made regarding Mashkin. One is that Mashkin becomes a Rishon L'Tumah, and it makes food tamei, and the other one is that mashkin makes kalim tamei. Even though usually a rishon l'tumah does not make kalim tamei, mashkin makes a kalim tamei as well. So now the Gemara says, according to Rab Meir, the two gzeiras of mashkin are considered to be one. Oichlin v'kelim shenitmu b'mashkin, the two gzeiras that mashkin make oichlin tamei and kalim tamei b'chade chashav lahu. He counts them both as one gzeira, and therefore we have 18 according to Rab Meir that counts them as one. According to Rabbi Yossi that counts them as two. We also have 18 gzeiras. That's the conclusion of the sugya of the 18 gzeiras. Now we're ready to go back to Masechta Shabbos, the halachas of Shabbos that will continue Mitzvah Shem in the next Mishnah starting tomorrow. It's a hemshach goes into the next Amid. We'll start a Mitzvah Shem tomorrow, the Mishnah with the next Inyan.
Chai is 11.
Yeah, the 18 Gzeiras of Chazal.